Let's kick things off with a question that's, well, literally out of this world. Imagine you're an astronaut, floating up there in zero gravity, surrounded by all this amazing technology. What's the one food, the one taste of home you'd miss the most?
So what's your guess? Pizza? A big juicy burger? Maybe even, I don't know, a fresh salad? Nope. According to NASA, the answer is something way simpler. And a lot colder.
That's right. It's ice cream. The one thing astronauts crave most is the same thing we all love for, birthdays, breakups, or just a hot summer day. And believe it or not, it has this incredible, surprisingly rich history. So for the next few minutes, let's get the inside scoop.
All right, so let's rewind. How did this frozen dessert even get its start in America and become such a big deal in the first place? Okay, so we don't know the exact date it landed on American shores, but our first big clue, it comes from a newspaper ad in the New York Gazette all the way back in 1777. I mean, think about that. Right in the middle of the Revolutionary War, someone was already thinking about and selling ice cream.
And after that first ad, things started to pick up. By 1790, the first ever ice cream parlor opened its doors in New York City. So it was becoming a thing, a treat people would actually go out and look for. But, and this is a big but, it was still super exclusive.
And it had some pretty famous fans. I'm talking top tier. Even President George Washington was apparently a huge fan. His personal records show he dropped a whopping $200 on the stuff at one point.
Now, $200 might not sound like a crazy amount today, but get this, in today's money, that's over $3,000. So yeah, this wasn't something you just pick up at the store. It was a total luxury item, a real status symbol for the super rich.
So, how did it go from being a treat reserved for presidents to something you and I can grab from pretty much any grocery store? Well, a couple of key things happened that completely changed the game. This whole journey had some major milestones. The first big one was in 1851, when the first ice cream factory opened, which made mass production possible. Then, jump to the 1930s, and it starts showing up in grocery store freezers. But the real explosion? That happened in 1946, right after World War II. Food rationing ended, and America basically celebrated with a giant collective scoop of ice cream. Its popularity just went through the roof. And to top it all off, in 1984, President Ronald Reagan officially made July National Ice Cream Month. How cool is that?
All right, history lesson over. Let's get into some of the more fun, kind of weird facts about ice cream. I bet a few of these are going to surprise you.
Okay, picture this. It's the early days of TV. You're trying to shoot a commercial and you've got this perfect-looking scoop of ice cream, but the studio lights are insanely hot. What do? How do you keep it from melting into a puddle in like 5 seconds?
Well, here's the secret. You don't use ice cream. Seriously. For decades, food stylists use this brilliant trick. They use scoops of mashed potatoes. They just add some food coloring, and it looked exactly like the real thing on camera, but it could sit there for hours under the heat. So next time you're watching an old TV ad, you might actually be looking at a potato.
Now, speaking of weird ideas, people have tried to make ice cream out of just about anything. And I mean anything. We're talking flavors like toothpaste, fish and chips, garlic, and even pizza. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I think I'll pass on a scoop of garlic ice cream. But for all those crazy flavors out there, what do most of us actually buy? It turns out our tastes are way more traditional. Yep, despite all the wild options, one single flavor completely dominates: vanilla. And it's not even close. It makes up a staggering 60% of all sales. Just good old classic vanilla. And of course, chocolate and strawberry come in right behind it. All right, pop quiz. What day of the week do you think sells the most ice cream? You might think Friday, kicking off the weekend. Or maybe Saturday?
Nope, it's Sunday. Seems like a nice scoop of ice cream is just the perfect way for everyone to wrap up the weekend. Simple as that.
Okay, so from a simple Sunday treat, let's zoom out a bit. Because today, the ice cream industry is, well, it's massive. We're talking big, big business.
Just to give you an idea of the scale, think about this. The average American eats around 27 liters of ice cream every single year. Every single year. That is a lot of ice cream.
But here's a fun fact. As much as Americans love ice cream, we're not actually number one. Who is? The Kiwis. People in New Zealand eat just a little bit more, averaging about 28 liters a year. So they're the world champs.
And all of that ice cream adds up to some serious cash. In the US alone, the industry is worth a mind-boggling $21 billion a year. That's an absolute powerhouse of an industry, all built around this one simple frozen dessert.
So when you think about it, what a journey, right? It went from this ultra-rare luxury that only a president could afford to a global, multi-billion-dollar comfort food, and it's the #1 thing astronauts miss in space. It really is a food for celebration, for comfort, for just pure, simple joy. And that kind of leaves you wondering, what does our shared universal love for this simple dessert really say about us?